Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'll be painting. Shocker. So, the story behind this painting, it's a painting for my dad. He had this frame and it looked like one of those decorative frames that you don't really put anything in, and you can usually find them at Home Goods or something like that. Sometimes Ross has them out, whatever. But anyways, his, if I have a picture of it, I'll put it up on the screen right here. His had like this pearly tile finish to it. Obviously, it's not real pearl. That'd be really cool though. But it's just a really cool white iridescent pearl finish. And there's like bars going across it, and because it's rectangular, it looks like it's segmented into like 3 squares, and on either end of each square there is a circle. So basically he gave me this frame and was like, hey, I want a painting in this. It feels weird that there's no painting in it, because he thought it'd be cool, like the concept of having a frame that is kind of busy, like there's a pattern in front of it, and then having a painting behind it, almost giving the effect of like a window or something like that. I was like, okay, I see your vision, yes, okay. And I thought that was such a cool idea. I knew it would be a lot of work, but the fact that he had 0 timeline, he was just like, make something, whatever you want, just paint something, was really cool. It was really cool. I haven't really had this much creative freedom with a project before, so I was like, alright, cool. He literally only had one condition, and I'm not sure if this is what he said word for word, but I think he said something similar-ish to, I don't want anything scary. And I know he did not mean that. No, he did not mean that in the mean way. My parents are both very, very supportive with what I make. They might not understand everything I make all the time, but you know what? They're still supportive. And, you know, I'm not going to force someone to have something that they think is scary in their house, because why would I do that? I don't want to make a painting for someone that like spooks them every time they go by their hallway, like, you know? That might be what I want for my home, and what a lot of the people I do paintings for want in their home, because they like spooky things. But you know what? Not everyone does, and that's totally fine. So besides that, I was told that I could paint whatever, which was amazing, and no deadline. Super cool. I could really take my time on it. So what I did was I went to Photoshop and I stitched together some images, and I came up with a few different ideas. And you know what? While I do love spooky things, I think that, you know, my style has other things within it that could be described as something else. You know, we kind of have an umbrella of things, I feel. Like artists, we don't just have one exact thing we do over and over again. Well, maybe some do. Some people do, and if that's what they like to do, sure. I don't like to do only one thing. I like having some sense of consistency that feels like it's from me, and I definitely have my own taste, but not literally every single painting of mine is like spooky. You know what does that make sense? I would say the general scope of my artwork falls under mysterious, sometimes whimsical, fantasy, surreal, ominous, and kind of mystical. So I think that, you know, there's other things that I can do that are not scary. And I really wanted to make a painting that felt very much like it was from me, but still would complement the frame and their home. So I pulled a few images and stitched together some painting ideas, and I sent them to them, and I also gave them references of what it would look like with the frame over it. And him and his wife both agreed on one of the painting ideas, and to be honest, it was my favorite one, so that made me so happy. This painting is of a blue heron, and I really wanted to pull some colors from the frame and add to that pearly kind of look. So I did white roses because I thought they would complement the finish on the frame so well. And the iridescent quality of the frame also just reminded me of the moon. And you guys looking at my art probably know I love the moon. I do put it in a lot of my ink work. A lot of third eyes, moons. I love them. I also felt like the crescent moon shape really worked with the circle that was built into the frame, and I thought it would complement the painting really well. And the background right now is just like a really dark navy blue, but I do plan on adding stars, Milky Way clouds, and making it just really mystical looking and pretty. And like the whole thing is lit up by moonlight. So is it inherently spooky? I don't think it is. It's a bird and pretty roses and a beautiful nighttime scene, but it's still something that I feel really represents my style well. So I think we'll both be very happy with the end result, and I can't wait to finish it. I did not finish it in this video. In this video, you're just seeing how I build it up to the stage where it's ready for details. This is kind of what I would call the ugly stage of a painting. It involves a lot of trust in yourself as an artist. I find that usually a painting gets worse before it gets better, so you just gotta trust the process. So I thought maybe it would be interesting to talk about why I chose a blue heron. It's not a bird I see painted a lot. I usually paint or draw rather crows or ravens. A lot of snakes. I paint a lot of snakes. But I chose a blue heron because of a specific memory I have. So my family and I used to live in a house where there was a koi pond. This was when I was like a child, by the way. Anyways, I loved the koi pond. The koi fish were massive. Like, they were beefy fish. And as you can imagine, to a bird, they probably looked like a whole ass meal. You know? And there was actually a blue heron that would come by and just stare at the koi fish. We had a net over the pond, so the bird could never eat the fish. But he could dream about it. He could think about it. There were a lot of times where this blue heron would come down in our backyard and just chill on top of the koi pond for like a long time. I forget if we gave him I forget the name. I think we just called him Harry the Heron. Or maybe it was Henry, I don't know. But it was something like that, and yeah, I don't know. So for some reason, I was like, I'm gonna do a blue heron, because that's like a memory I have of the house. I also live in the Pacific Northwest, and I see blue heron a lot. I just think they're really pretty. I would just like to add that painting feathers is really intimidating. Like, it's a lot. It feels like painting hair, sort of, except there's almost like a geometric pattern to it. I feel like hair is easier to BS, you know, because you could be like, oh, I'm just gonna add a strand there. But feathers have a specific, almost like a geometric pattern. Not geometric, but like they're lined up in a specific way, and they have like rows going on, and they have a specific way they're overlapped on each other. You know, because birds open their wings a certain way, so the feathers are going to lay on top of each other a certain way too, coming from a functioning perspective, if that makes sense. So you had to pay more attention, like more focus needs to be put on these feathers to make sure, like, does this make sense? And the reference photo I had was a little bit blurry, so I had to look at more than one picture of a heron to make sure, like, the feathers were right. But I tell you what, man, when you finally get that out of the way, like, okay, this one goes here and is casting a shadow on this one directly underneath it, and that pattern just keeps going. Once you nail that down, then it gets a lot easier. You know what you're doing, and you just have to focus on painting one feather at a time. Ugh. It's kind of annoying, but I think I learned to enjoy the process, and I think I might end up painting more birds in the future, because, I don't know, I learned to like it, I guess. I will say, though, that, like, the awkward part was the butt feathers, tail feathers. I'm gonna call them butt feathers, that's what they are. I mean, yeah. Because they're kind of blurry in a lot of pictures. I mean, you don't see a lot of people taking pictures of bird butts unless, like, I don't know, that's a very niche and weird part of the internet, I guess. Oh, Jesus Christ. But you know what I mean? Like, it's annoying when you have to paint something and you're like, damn, what does behind a bird foot look like? And you find yourself Googling, like, the back of a bird foot. Like, what? And I don't know. I usually just look up whatever animal I'm painting and then the word anatomy just to make sure I'm getting it right. I found that when I was painting fish, I never finished that painting, by the way, my koi fish painting. Anyways, when I was working on that painting, I literally had to look up, like, 3D models of koi fish that I could turn around, because I wanted to make sure that the gills were right, or, you know, I had to make sure, like, oh, what does the top of a koi fish's eyeball look like? Like, it's just, art makes you look up and research very specific things. And honestly, it makes sense why back in the Renaissance times, artists had to look at actual humans and experience anatomy, like, up front in a scientific way to understand how to paint people correctly and things like that. I think I want to get into more anatomy and, like, actual anatomy of things and how different animals are built and things like that, just because I think research like that just helps your art so much, and adding that knowledge to your visual library in your brain can also really help with making up creatures of your own, like character design, things like that. So, long story longer, I think I'm gonna get more anatomy books. Yeah. Because with animals, you know, I'm not going to have access to a tiger. You know what I mean? Anyways, back to talking about the painting. Ugh, God, I talk so much. So the moonlight is going to be the main source of light. I am aware there's technically, it looks like there's 2 light sources in this painting. Because if the whole painting was completely backlit by the moon that's behind the bird's head, the whole painting itself would be a lot more dim, and there would be a lot more, what are they called? Really sharp highlights around the outline of every single subject. You know what I mean? What are they called? I don't know. And I didn't want the painting to be that dimly lit because there's going to be a pattern built into the frame already going in front of it, so I want it to be well lit so you know what's behind the frame. So technically, if the moon was the only light source, this would be a lot darker overall, but I am keeping in mind the direction of where that light source is, where the moon is, but I'm also keeping a very general lit natural light at the front of it, so it's not so dim and you can see what's going on. But around the parts that are especially right in front of the moon, I'm going to have really sharp highlights outlining, like for instance the head of the bird. There's going to be a lot of harsh highlights around the neck, feathers, and the head and the beak, because it's directly in front of the moon. And similar with other areas like the rose leaves, the ones closest to the moon are going to have some harsh highlights like that. And then, so you're seeing like a side view of the heron, and obviously there's a wing behind the one that we can see most of. What was really hard was getting the feathers from the other wing to kind of peek through to make it look like there's another wing on the other side. You just can't see it because we're looking at it on the side view. But in the reference photo, there were some feathers from the other wing kind of poking out. And you can see those are kind of like a light blue. They're going to have the most highlights on them, like harsh highlights, because they're going to be very close to the crescent moon. And I will be doing the same, like I said, to the roses, but I had previously worked so long on those roses, oh my god, and they're still not completely done, but they're at least built up to the point where I can add in the fine details and highlights. This is like the stage of the painting, like I said earlier, it's kind of like the ugly stage where you get it built up to the point where like, okay, yes, this looks like a painting. It's past the point of color blocking, and it's the in-between stages of like color blocking and then like the final details. Basically where you blend all the colors together and really create form in the subject matter you're painting. So I did that for the most part in the roses on the left. I still have to do more to the roses at the bottom, especially those couple of leaves to the right I kind of neglected because I just wasn't focused on them at this point. The bird takes up the majority of the painting, so I really wanted to make sure I just got this out of the way. I was really dreading doing the feathers, but I'm so glad I just tackled it head on because now I can work on building up the layers on the rest of the panels and get it ready for details, which is my favorite part of the painting. So in the detail stage, I usually go in with a smaller brush. I find that for the very first layers, you start with a larger brush, and then as you keep going, you end up using smaller and smaller brushes. So the final layer is when I really put in like the texture in the feathers and the little hairs on each feather with a tiny brush, or maybe the veins and the highlights and the leaves of the roses. But I also use a lot of watercolor pencils. And here is why. Watercolor pencils blend into gouache so well. In the final detail stages, I find that, you know, sometimes a certain area needs a little bit more of like a pop of color to really add more dimension to the piece. And watercolor pencils are such a great way to do that without having to go back in with paint and muddy up everything else you already did, since gouache tends to, you know, revive all of the colors underneath. So what I do is, if there's an area where I'm like, okay, that shadow, I think at the very edge of that shadow, it would look really cool if I added some more blue. And I can just pop that in there and blend it in with a very, 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 very damp brush, and it blends in seamlessly. Whereas if I used a blue color of gouache, it would require more blending and it would risk my tendency to overblend and end up muddying up everything I just did. Because I know myself, I am self-aware of my tendencies when I paint. I tend to just blur everything together. I don't know why. I just want everything to look smooth and perfect, and you know, you can't do that at every single layer of a painting. It becomes a mess. I also use pan pastels. They're basically just chalk pastels, but they're in these makeup compact disc looking things. And they come with these sponge applicators that kind of remind me of like the applicators you get with eyeshadow palettes sometimes. And you can blend that into areas where you want to really add a smooth gradient. It's really good for things like clouds, smoke, and the grit from the gouache really holds onto the pastels really well. So I really love that combination together. I think it's great. In the next video, I will show you guys the detailing stage, which is my favorite. It's probably going to be the video where I add in the stars in the background, the Milky Way clouds, all of the texture in the feathers, all of that fun stuff that really is satisfying. It's that stage of the painting where you're like, yes, that is the cherry on top. Everything is done, complete, looks good, yay, and you feel really accomplished. And adding those highlights at the end, oh my god, it's my favorite part. So anyways, that will probably be the next video featuring this painting. Right, here was the really tricky part, the wing that's closest to the audience, you viewing the painting. In the reference photo, there is a shadow cast underneath the wing, naturally, since it's like curved out, you know, the bird has its wings open. But it's going to catch a little bit of light depending on how the feathers are arranged. But like I said, the reference photo was a little hard to look at for little details like that. It was still a good reference photo, it still worked, but zooming in and trying to see how the feathers were arranged in the darkest part of the wing was kind of hard. And it was a little bit harder because I think the bird in the photo was kind of ruffling his feathers, so some of them are a little bent up and others are down a little bit more, so it was just kind of difficult to look at. But I still managed to be able to get it correct. And honestly, this was also really hard because I had to have the feathers line up with the other panel, but it wound up working out. Also, did you guys catch my face with the face mask on? Oh god. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next video next week. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you did not, give it a thumbs down. And yeah, bye!